In a Monday Supreme Court hearing that many of you watch on our YouTube channel, the state's 5 justices unanimously agreed that the governor has the right to set some heavy penalties for violations of her public health orders, including fines of $5,000 a day she's levied on businesses that have defied her orders to close in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, GOP Chair Steve Pearce says the decision by 4 Democrats and a Republican, that would be Judy Nakamura, shows the importance of electing conservative judges. Dan, I want to start with you on this. Even the conservative judge in the situation said the law here clearly allows the governor to enforce her orders the way she is. Any issue there?
Well, the conservative judge, I don't think Judge Nakamura is a stalwart of conservatism. I don't think anybody would turn around and say that she's carrying the banner for conservatism. I think that at the end of the day, there's some real conversations that, the law that was passed limits what she can fine is up to $100 per day, and that she's decided to increase those fines arbitrarily, which is different than what the legislation that was passed by the legislature allows her to do. So, I think that the real question is, what does the bill say that was passed, and what are they doing? And, once again, to get me going, this is the problem with the courts in this state, right? It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter who's governor, what's going on. You have a law. The legislation was drafted, says you can charge up to this. You can do whatever the law says. That's what the courts should be advising them to do.
But that's what they did, no? Am I mistaken on that?
All limits which she can charge in some of the is, and that she's gone above what the statute said that she could do is the argument from the people that are fighting this in the courts right now.
Senator, is that the way you heard it?
No, I was the author of that legislation, actually, the legislation, which was House Bill 231 and is now called FARA, does allow the governor and the Department of Health through its rulemaking authority to levy whatever fines is needed. Having said that, there are a number of limits on the governor and the state as to what they can do in a time of public health emergency, but that is not one of them. And there are a number of them. And she has so far acted within that power. For example, this act must be renewed every 30 days. It's a temporary grant of extraordinary power to the health department. It's not permanent, but it does give the governor extraordinary powers when it comes to quarantining, even families. It does give the governor the power to take over healthcare facilities. And this was all passed by the legislature, almost unanimously. Only one vote opposed in the Senate, one vote in the House, because there were some limits that were attached to the original bill. The original bill that we had back in 2003 was based on a model public health ordinance. And we changed it. It was Representative John Heaton and myself and a number of folks from the Department of Health and the Department of Public Safety. And it does give extraordinary powers to the governor. And levying fines is one of them. There is another portion of the law that maybe we'll discuss later, which has to do with takings. And that, I think, will be the subject of future lawsuits.
Interesting. Giovanna, when you think about this, what's the practical application of this decision out of the Supreme Court? Does it really fundamentally have a practical effect out there in the public?
I am assuming that it's going to hopefully incentivize businesses to comply with the public health order. And I think that's what the governor's attorney was trying to say, was that we need to be able to implement higher fines in order to really make the point that this is a serious emergency. And, it's not, we don't have time for all of for all of this kind of arguing about it, we just need you to not, or to comply with the public health orders. So I'm hoping that it will, and I'm also hopeful that there's some innovative, other, creative ideas for helping these businesses, because ultimately nobody wants, these businesses to be hurting right now. It's not like people are sitting around saying, let's think of all the things we can put in a public health order to really, really kill these businesses. That's not the point. So while we are giving, while the governor is giving out these public health orders, I think she also needs to make it clear what are the innovative, creative, other ways that they can pivot and transform their businesses right now. And there are some things out there. There are grants for expanding outdoor patio spaces. In the conversation before we recorded, Senator Feldman had some cool ideas that I'm sure she'll share. But there are different, and I think the businesses that are able to be innovative, pivot, and transform are going to be the ones that that are going to, do better right now.
Mm-hmm. Good point there. Hey, Dan, all things are political, as we were talking about in the previous segment. And Republican Chair Stephen Pierce has vowed to make this an issue in November. And we've got two Democrats who are to be appointed Democrats who are going to be defending their seats. What's going on here on the politics here? Is this really going to be an issue in November, do you think?
If Steve Pierce threatens to come after you, I wouldn't be worried about it. So that's much to fear. I mean, the stuff that he made an issue in the campaign and got walloped by the governor, his ability to attack anybody is really, so I do think that there's going to be a conversation and an issue in the upcoming elections about this stuff. And I think that those who oppose, the longer this goes on, the more favorable it's going to be to them, because the more you go on, the more it's going to affect people, the angrier people are going to get. And I think that you're going to see.
But how do you make something out of that? Anger is one thing, but how do you flip that?
How you get everybody to do anything. I mean, if you're not paying attention to politics, we're not debating the stuff politically on its merits. It's all about enticing anger and fear and getting people out to do something. That's what politics is generated. I don't know what utopia you live in, but nobody's sending out Skittles and rainbows and telling people to vote for them. It's all always about how bad the other person is.
That's true.
And I think
let me squeeze Didi in here. Same question. Is there a bounce here in November either way for Democrats or Republicans on this?
The poll data is pretty much in favor of the governor's position right now, but it could change the longer it goes on. I agree with Dan. People just are restless, and the more they fear, the more they are likely to do anything. What we will see is we'll see more lawsuits. We'll see more commentary. We'll see more, I think we'll see more candidates making an issue of it, but not really being able to strike pay dirt, I think, on it.
We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to leave that there. We do want to encourage you to head to our Facebook page, where the line panelists also discuss a state commission which is studying a legal doctrine that's designed to protect public employees from crippling lawsuits. But does it do so at the cost of civil rights? We'll talk about it in a Line Web Extra. Correspondent Laura Paskus is back with her ongoing series of conversations with journalists covering COVID-19 in their communities. This week, she talks to Jessica Ansures. She's the editor of the Carlsbad Current and Argus. The Carlsbad Current Argus. Now, Ms. Ansures and her reporters are covering the virus in a part of the state where case prevalence continues to rise amid resistance to the governor's public health orders.